We've been playing more of the War Within Alpha recently, and you know what? It's still a lot of fun. Hi, it's Llarold, and I'm going to talk about Ret and Protection Paladin and talk about their hero specs, but first, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, so just as kind of a disclaimer here, it's always important to talk about how the classes feel more than like the numbers. Damage tuning is always the last thing that gets balanced and finalized before release. Design is sort of the feel aspect of you know, how it feels to play the class, and that is what I want to focus on, because that is where you want to give feedback and kind of let people know, you know, what they're getting into, and just kind of what the state of the class looks like so far. So in terms of what I've done on Paladin, I've leveled through several zones now. I can't remember all of the names, but then also done some dungeons as Prot Paladin, but I've played both Ret and Prot quite a bunch. So ultimately, right, I'm not going to talk about Holy. I haven't thought about healing since Cataclysm, basically, and I like it that way. But, you know, tanks and DPS, I definitely have really been enjoying Paladin, to my dismay, I think, because I definitely feel like I'm in a bit of a prison on one right now in Dragonflight with how poor their damage is, but it does seem like Prot Paladin and Ret Paladin, which are both in great shape right now in Dragonflight, are getting buffed. And that's kind of what I want to talk about throughout this whole process. It does seem like both of these classes, which again, were already good, got better. All right, I've had to re-record a little bit of class changes stuff due to some technical issues and compounding that with some Blizzard side technical issues. I'm not able to log back into my main character. So had to make a new one and set that all up. Very fun, always fun in a testing environment. So in terms of like class changes, there really aren't very many significant ones. I'll kind of show off one of the biggest ones, which is that Greater Judgment, the, you know, judgment making monsters take extra, or enemies take extra damage from your next holy power skill. You're actually able to stack that multiple times now, and I will stack that up here in a second once the cooldown comes back up. As you can see, multiple stacks, you know, that's interesting. Not necessarily hugely valuable, but it does mean just generally kind of a net positive for damage for Paladins, since there are times, especially for Prot, where you'll be able to judgment multiple times in a row before you're able to shield of the righteous. Definitely can happen. Not really so common with Ret, but definitely a damage increase, you know, just kind of something interesting, something that can happen with like divine tolls and stuff. In terms of other changes for Paladin, there really isn't very significant stuff in terms of just class changes. Like Touch of Light was part of a choice node down here, and that has been moved up in place of, I have a talent tree pulled up here, in place of Crusader's Reprieve, the skill, what is this? A passive that would give you a little bit of range on like your auto attacks and your interrupt, and a little bit of healing. It's not really that significant of a talent, and the thing is that this is coming on the heels of Blizzard saying they're nerfing all the range talents for all of the different specs, but they're not nerfing any of the amazing range that you get as Ret. Like, I could still Judgment from a million miles away, I could still Blade of Justice from pretty far away, I could still Final Verdict from far away. So, you know, none of that has changed. And obviously, Prot Pally is still Steph Curry with the Avenger shields from downtown, Judgment from super far away. So Pally really hasn't lost any range, certainly hasn't lost any utility with Blessing or Protection and Sacrifice and Lay on Hands and all of the usual stuff you would expect. I think the only thing that maybe like hasn't changed that I would hope for is spell wording is still Prot only, and that is disappointing. Now, in terms of spec changes, there have actually been some pretty significant changes to protection in the last week or two, and I want to kind of go over those now. We'll start with this one right here. Sanctuary has been changed. Consecration's benefits persist for 4 seconds after you leave it. So watch this. Look at the consecration buff there. I'm just going to walk along, and as you can see, I still have the damage reduction buff. I still have, you know, the other buffs that don't really matter, but like if I were spec'd into Hammer of the Righteous instead of Blessed Hammer, you know, that would still do the AoE wave that it does. But as you can see, like, just look at how long this lasts. Look at how long it takes me to actually get out of the circle. I'm just hitting it on cooldown as I'm walking along with pretty bad gear. I mean, 11% haste, very terrible. Quest gear, quest screens. And if I just walk along and drop Consecration on the ground, I basically never have the debuff fall off at all. Now, obviously, this isn't like an ideal rotation, but this is kind of indicative of what Blizzard is doing to solve this Paladin Consecration nightmare that Pallies have been crying about for as long as this has existed. And I have to say, it looks like as always with Pallies, crying works because this is a perfect fix. This is great. It does actually make me like relish the chains that I'm going to be shackled to of Paladin just a little bit more. It is actually pretty nice to have this bonus. It really does make playing Paladin a lot less painful to have. I mean, in the literal sense that you will be taking a lot less damage, but also just in the like mental sense of you're not fighting against your own toolkit. This is good. Additionally, this talent right here, Light of the Titans, has been reworked slightly to be a 20% WOG bonus, and it's also 1 point, as you can see, 1 point. There's also the other talent over here on the other side, Bulwark of Order, which again was a 2-pointer that would give you up to 60% shielding based on your Avenger shield damage, and then a cap of 30% of your max health. That has been reworked to be 50% of the damage that Avenger shield does. So actually less, but it's only 1 point now instead of 2, and the cap is also 50% of your max health. So I would argue that this is a buff overall. More importantly, this is definitely a buff overall because you always wanted this talent. It's really, really good. And now it's only 1 point to get max value out of it instead of 2, so that gives you a free point to play around with somewhere else. So like you might take Barricade of Faith and Inspiring Vanguard in Mythic Plus, where previously you would have only taken Barricade of Faith. Maybe you'll take Improved Holy Shield now in Barricade of Faith if you really want to be super tanky. You could potentially take Light of the Titans in places where you wouldn't have in the past. There's definitely some good freedom there. There's also some talents that I would say are still like, I don't know, kind of duds. Faith in the Light, 5 seconds of block chance after you cast Word of Glory. That's a dud. These talents down here for healing other players, not worthless, definitely not bad at all. They've been used by a lot of prop Pallies over the last expansion to do like 1 tank, 4 DPS groups. Degenerate, not what Blizzard intends for like high level Mythic Plus to not have a healer in the group, but it is very good, can't argue with that, and that hasn't gone away at all yet. A really big notable, like a super notable change here is that Soaring Shield and Focused Enmity have been separated from each other. So Soaring Shield, as you can see, it's in the top like 2/3 of the tree, so it's super easy to get. So you'll basically will always have this, unless you're doing a pure single target boss fight, in which case you'll probably do this. You'll probably take Seal of Reprisal and Focused Enmity, something like that. But Soaring Shield now like is not mutually exclusive with Focused Enmity, so for Mythic Plus, if you're really focusing on doing a lot of damage, you can take Soaring Shield, have that multi-target, extra hits on all the different targets, but then also still have Focused Enmity for more single target damage on bosses that last for a while, or like, I'm sure there'll be some sort of lieutenant mob that you have to fight in some of the dungeons where you're stuck on a single target for a long time, and being able to get double damage out of your Avenger shield the whole time without giving up Soaring Shield is really good. It's also a really good synergy with Bulwark of Order. Both of those talents are really nice synergistic talents with Bulwark of Order, so that is pretty good. Obviously, maybe the most notable thing here is that Strength and Adversity and Crusader's Resolve have been moved from over here on the right-hand side, kind of upper third of the tree, upper quarter, or upper half of the tree, I should say. And also Strength and Adversity has gotten a massive buff. Currently, the way it works, if we look at the talent tree here, is that it gives you 2% parry for 15 seconds. And with this talent setup here, with the current state of the War Within, it gives you 5% parry for each target hit by Avenger Shield. So I'll just show that off here. All right, I've got 21% parry chance. I'll throw an Avenger Shield in this pack of, what is this, 4 mobs? Yeah, 4. And that's 20%. So obviously if this were 5 mobs at a time, that would be 25% parry. And, you maintain that, it's a 15-second duration, you maintain that 100% of the time. So Paladin just got wildly tanky in Mythic Plus off of this change, like to an absurd degree. The alternative here is Crusader's Resolve, which has really gotten a change that, like, I think is kind of deceptive for some people. It seemed like, oh, that's really good for raid, 10% reduced melee damage if you hit an enemy with Avenger Shield. And it is interesting, but, previously the way it worked is it would give you the stacking 2% damage reduction debuff on enemy. The stacks would overlap, but wouldn't, like, refresh the duration, kind of like a Bear Druid's Iron Fur. So you'd get somewhere between 2 and 6% damage reduction on a boss all the time by having this up, usually about 4%. The way it works now is you're going to have a permanent uptime, pretty much, on 10% melee damage reduction against the boss, which sounds good. but this is specifically melee flagged. Like, this is only melees. So if you're doing a boss like, I can't think of one from Dragonflight, although I know there are many. Actually, yes, I can. Here we go. Perfect Dragonflight boss example. Amir Drasil, the Dream's Hope, Naimu, Nemoy, however, Weaver of the Cycle. She doesn't auto attack. She uses Threaded Blast. This talent, literally no effect on her. I was going to pull out Sylvanas from Shadowlands because she did the same thing. She wouldn't actually use auto attacks on enemies. She would use her shots. Yeah, but that's not in the dungeon journal. But anyways, if it is an ability like shoot or a spell cast that they use instead of literal melee attacks, then this will do nothing. And that's bad. So I don't think this is great as it currently stands. I think converting this even to just like a 4 or 5% damage reduction from the target would have been, I mean, it would have been a buff, but I think that would have been a better change. Even like 3% damage reduction would have been probably a nerf compared to the old version, but I don't know. The old version I think is actually better than this for a lot of practical applications, which is kind of unfortunate. There maybe are some situations where it could be better if a boss is really heavy on the melee damage, really heavy on the auto attacks, but generally speaking, bosses that are built around auto attacks are more like Zaskarn in Aberrus, where they are built around some damage over time effect that they apply with melees, and their melees hit for like, 5,000 damage a hit or whatever, but the damage over time effect deals 90% of the boss's damage. That's not going to be affected by this. Now, as for the rest of the tree, almost all of it's the same. Bastion of Light has been redesigned once again to now make it so your next 5 judgments generate 2 holy power. I think this talent's really bad, generally speaking. You get 5 holy power every 2 minutes. That's pretty bad. It's not a great damage increase. It's not really a great survivability increase. The only reason I could see justify taking it is if you're taking something that's trivially easy. You really want to just have like more damage. This is still a tiny, this is, in the literal sense, this is an actual damage increase, whereas Resolute Defender, which gives you a lot of cooldown reduction on Ardent Defender and Divine Shield, great talent, doesn't increase your damage. So, hypothetically speaking, you could take Bastion of Light for like some sort of parsing on a prop paladin. That is something you could do, but I don't think it seems all that great. With that being said, I do think that the parsing talent setup does seem like more interesting for prop pally. Like, I do think you could probably run something that's more along these lines where you're getting Moment of Glory and Bulwark of Righteous Fury and Inmost Light with Eye of Tyr and Bastion of Light and Righteous Protector. You're not taking any of the talents that are defensive at all. This is for like trivially easy stuff. Maybe you're doing like a parse week deep during Mythic Farm, something like that. You could take all of these offensive nodes down at the bottom, and that is a potential for more damage than exists as the class currently is. Now, as for Mythic Plus, I think Prop Pally has basically been buffed somewhat. Again, I think the addition of Sanctuary just makes them stronger in Mythic Plus. I think the reduction in cost for Bulwark of Order has made them stronger in Mythic Plus. I don't think it's a substantial change. Obviously, Strength and Adversity has made them stronger for Mythic Plus, but I don't think like the changes are really that significant. They're more just like, they got like a nice, I mean, good grief, they got 15% more parry. Oh my god, that's so huge. What am I saying? Yeah, Prop Valley's definitely stronger. It's crazy. It doesn't seem like it'll really feel different to play. You'll just be a lot stronger. That's really all that there is to it. Now I'm going to look at Ret, and Ret has actually gotten a bit more of a significant change. Ret's Mastery has been changed from just increasing your holy damage to now having this second component of it, where Judgment has a chance to blast the target with light, dealing a bunch of extra damage. I am just going to throw a Judgment here and see if I can get a proc. I think we got it right there. Yep, we got it right there. Literally first shot. As you can see, it's quite substantial. I mean, in my current state of gear and all here, it's actually doing more than the Judgment itself. We'll throw a couple more Judgments along the way just to kind of see, but that is something that is then interacted with by several talents, and it does seem like it's going to be kind of a core component of the class. Now, as Ret currently exists, I think it's probably the strongest melee spec in the game. It's definitely the most popular in Mythic Plus. I think it's the most popular in Raid. That's not always an indicator of success, especially in a season like Season 4 of Dragonflight, but I will say, even though I don't have a ton of experience historically playing Red, I've always thought it was a spec that is lame. Let's throw another Judgment and see if we can get a proc. Not this time. My god, it is fun. It is so fun to play right now in Dragonflight, and playing it in the War Within Alpha, significantly more fun. Don't know how they did it. I feel embarrassed to admit that I'm having a fun time playing Ret Paladin, as you're supposed to, but man, it's fun. It hits so hard. It is so bursty. It is very like snappy and reactive to play. It really feels good to play. And I would say, generally speaking, the talent layout that like is kind of the go-to talent setup for Mythic Plus and so on in the Dragonflight state of the game is still very much alive and functional in the coming expansion. Now, maybe it won't be the go-to choice, but at least as it currently stands, it is an option. So a couple of things that have changed here are Vanguard of Justice is a new talent here that makes it so that enemies that you've hit with Final Verdict will take more damage from your next Divine Storm. There we go. Vanguard of Justice, completely redesigned from being the raid talent that would make all of your Holy Power spenders cost 4 Holy Power and then do more damage. It's kind of an unwieldy playstyle, really something I had not enjoyed playing around with at all. Totally redesigned it as something that's more AoE oriented. I don't know that it's all that great, and certainly like in leveling and stuff, I found it to be a total like 0 because, you know, it's 2 points. It's relying on the idea that you're going to Final Verdict stuff and then hit it with a Divine Storm, which in leveling on a Ret Paladin, nothing is alive long enough for me to be able to smack it with multiple sets of finishers. Like this, especially after playing like Fury Warrior, which I really enjoyed the flow of, but found the damage to be kind of sus, and just a couple of other specs, I was really, really blown away by how Ret Paladin just seemed to like consistently blast everything in half with the power of the light, I guess. Judge, Jury, and Executioner, very fun talent over here. Divine Storm has a 40% chance to make your next Final Verdict hit an additional 3 targets, so that's pretty cool, pretty good option for Cleave. I think that could actually wind up being pretty good. And then maybe the biggest thing is that Radiant Glory is now a new talent that replaces Avenging Wrath. You're not able to cast Avenging Wrath anymore. Like, this is my Avenging Wrath cooldown or keybind here, Alt tilde. I'm tapping it, nothing is happening. Instead, what happens is when you press Wake of Ashes, you get Avenging Wrath. This also works with Crusade. It's currently 10 seconds by default. If you spec into Divine Wrath, then it'll be 13. It also gives you a chance when you just spend Holy Power to get free wings. And so the uptime on this, not totally sure, but in playing around with it while leveling, it seemed like it was somewhere in the range of 45, 50%, which seems very high. If you're playing around with Crusade, then the duration on this is longer to, you know, allow you to ramp up the Crusades. And also, as it says, or maybe it doesn't say here, but if it procs, like if one of the Holy Power expenditures procs while you have it active from having hit Wake of Ashes, it will add onto that duration. And this also synergizes with all of the hero talent setups that I'll kind of go into for Ret Paladin, but like they also made a change here where if you turn your camera, if you turn your character, I haven't played too much with this because, you know, but basically if you turn your character while you're Wake of Ashesing or lagging out, what's happening here? Yeah, we're lagging out. All right, cool. Oh, there we go, fun. If you turn your camera while you're Wake of Ashesing, then the Wake of Ashes will follow your camera, where your camera is facing. So like, you know, we'll give it 20 seconds here, but basically if I Wake of Ashes and turn my camera, it'll follow the way I'm facing as opposed to the way the character is facing, which is like maybe a little confusing. I think it's probably good quality of life for players, but it is different from the way that most spells in the game work. So that's a little strange. All right, let's try another one without any lag, please, sir. Yeah. You know, that's fine. I can't really think of any times where I'm ever spinning my camera without like right mousing it. So like, I don't really see that being an issue. It seems pretty easy to follow and skill shot somebody with that Wake of Ashes to me. But as you can see, let me see here. Let me see if I can get a nice, oh my God, a nice lag-free Wake of Ashes where I just get that wings up. All right, here we go. Hit that Wake of Ashes again, and as you can see, 13 seconds of Avenging Wrath here. See if I can just slap some Final Verdicts into this and get a proc while it's active. May not happen. Servers are having a little trouble. That really undermines the ability of hitting on a training dummy and being able to talk about it. Good thing I have plenty of experience playing around with this out in the world. Oh, there we go. Look at that. and they do add into each other as well. As you can see, I had several seconds left, and I hit a Wake of Ashes, and it didn't overwrite the time to just set it to 13 seconds. It did actually add in very smoothly. This is something we've kind of seen in the past where, like, for Brewmaster Monk or any flavor of monk that was Necrolord for a while, you could get a Bone Dust Brew proc, Bone Dust Brew with a 10-second base duration. You would then throw a fresh Bone Dust Brew over the top of it by hand, and then instead of adding those durations together, it would like reset to 10. They kind of took some time to fix that, and then broke it again, and then fixed it again. This is coming in from the very start, fixed and working as well as it possibly can. And this is like such a huge increase to your Avenging Wrath uptime, but also like it's not just that it gives you the simplicity, making it easier for the class, for the players using Avenging Wrath. It also synergizes with everything else that you want. Every single time you hit Wake of Ashes, you're proccing one of your 2 hero talent specs, your main thing for that hero talent spec, and this means you're going to have Avenging Wrath up every single time for that, which is huge. There's no time where Ret Pally's not going to have a burst window where it's not like an insanely huge burst window. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the hero talent specs, and I think Herald of the Sun is the good one to start with since it is Ret and Holy, and it is really fun. I really like this a lot. So the main trigger for this is casting Wake of Ashes will make your next 2 holy power spenders apply Dawnlight. Dawnlight is a big damage over time or healing over time effect, and it also causes you to radiate a bit of extra damage to nearby allies or enemies, so it's very clearly intended as sort of an AoE spec, like, you know, basically the Mythic Plus spec if you really had to boil it down to be that simple. There's also some extra bonuses on top of it. Things like Gleaming Rays, which makes you deal more damage during that 8-second window of Dawnlight being active. This bonus right here that I really enjoy, Blessing of Anshe, makes it so your dots, your damage over time and healing over time effects have a chance to make your next Hammer of Wrath be instantly usable on a target regardless of their health pool, and also do triple damage. So your Hammer of Wraths, when this is active, will just hit like a bus. It feels great. You can also take Lingering Radiance to just get a bit more like passive damage or healing on using those Dawn Lights, but I really, really like the Hammer of Wrath pops. They feel great. They hit super duper hard. You also do get just some passive, like some built-in damage over time from Hammer of Wrath and Divine Storm crits. You also get increased crit chance on those 2 skills. So, and then finally you get a chance for them to proc again for a little bit of extra damage, really just more chances to fish for crits, to get that Sunseer proccing, and also to get then, you know, damage over time applied to trigger those Blessings of Anshe. You also get a built-in Divine Purpose every time you Wake of Ashes, so you get this really, really satisfying burst combo. And maybe my favorite part of the whole thing, just to like not skip over Solar Grace, you get a bit of haste also when you apply Dawnlight, fine. But then maybe my favorite thing out of this whole talent tree is that when you Avenging Wrath, which because of the whole talent tree, you're doing that at least every 30 seconds, you link to your Dawnlights, and you also throw Dawnlights into nearby enemies and allies, and you make them last longer. So I'll try that over here on this training dummy. This is basically the fire chain that Unholy DKs get, except, you know, it also applies to like allies and enemies, and it's not just you and a pet, it's you and a whole group of enemies. I mean, look at this. Yeah, we're having a little lag here on the service this Sunday morning, but that's fine. Ultimately, like, as you can see, the lines are really, really popping off. They're doing a lot of damage. And also just a very, like, fun, thematically consistent idea here that you have all of this burst damage coming out in the Wake of Ashes window and the, like, 10 to 20 seconds that come afterward. And lots of damage over time, lots of procs on your Hammer of Wrath coming out of that damage over time. Just lots and lots of damage, all in a very like condensed window that is then spread across a bunch of different targets. I do like the design of the flaming chains, giving you a reason to like look around, see where enemies are standing, and kind of position yourself so that chain is cutting through everything and really setting it on fire. I think that's really fun. Ultimately, I like this one a lot. I think for me, it was my least favorite of the 2, but they're very similar, and I liked it a lot. You know what I mean? Like this is like a plus spec. It's definitely not bad, but the alternative is Templar, and Templar is brilliant. Now, I think Templar is maybe a little bit more single target oriented, but as you can see from the main skill here, when you cast Wake of Ashes, you're able to follow up by casting Hammer of Light, and you have 12 seconds in which to do that. Hammer of Light costs 5 holy power, so it's a big holy power consumer, which, because Ret Paladin is so flush with holy power all the time, I actually found this to be like a very pleasant experience to have something that can eat up all of my holy power all at once and do a massive amount of damage. In playing around out in the world and testing with this was doing like millions of damage on random dudes. And as you can see, it does deal a lot of extra cleave damage to up to 4 nearby enemies, so it's still useful in Mythic Plus, AoE situations, AoE raid fights. Like, these are both, and again, tied to Wake of Ashes. So both of these talent trees are very much built around that 30-second Wake of Ashes window, which is now built around Radiant Glory, giving you Avenging Wrath every single time, and just really, really adding like a massive amount of damage on a very short cooldown. Now, this will also be relevant for protection. The difference for Templars, instead of it being like a damage over time thing, you're really built around these Empyrean Hammers. When you call down Empyrean Hammers from the sky to strike on your enemies when you press the main skill Hammer of Light, due to Zealous Vindication, which I like a lot more than this talent here, this Divine Toll oriented talent, just kind of giving you more damage on your judgments when you do it in like single target. I don't know, maybe it could be good in like single target raid fights, but I really like Zealous Vindication, giving you Empyrean Hammers that come down as soon as you cast Hammer of Light. You also have Shake the Heavens, which gives you a series of hammers over several seconds after you've Hammer of Lighted. And then there are some other talents as well in here, such as Higher Calling, that extends that Shake the Heavens duration. Let's see here. Hammerfall makes it so that when you cast Templar's Verdict or Divine Storm, you also get an Empyrean Hammer, but if Shake the Heavens is active, then it's 2. You also have Endless Wrath that makes it so that when you call down an Empyrean Hammer, you're guaranteed to be able to use Hammer of Wrath, regardless of the target's health, and the cooldown's instantly reset. This is also available for Prot, and instead of it being Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm, obviously, it's Shield of the Righteous, which you're doing all the time as Prot. Probably more, I mean, you know, you're casting Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm and Shield of the Righteous very often, like every 4 to 5 seconds as a Ret Pally or a Prot Pally, so you are calling hammers down all the time, and you're really just raining hammers like crazy. And then you have this talent here, Wrathful Descent, which gives you an 8-second 5% damage reduction window when you crit with one of those hammers. It also causes them to kind of split some of that damage out onto nearby enemies. It's not a huge amount of damage, but it does mean you're going to have pretty high uptime on about 5% damage reduction, which 5% is not a lot, but you know, the uptime is going to be pretty consistently high. So I think it's pretty good. Then you also get this talent here that I just really like, Good Quality of Life. Divine Steve lasts 2 seconds longer, and as you can see here, I am spec'd into Seasoned Warhorse for the base extra 2 seconds, and then 2 seconds from Unrelenting Charger. So you can see here 7 seconds of Steed. First 3 seconds it moves about 30% faster, and that is actually pretty noticeable. So I've really, really liked Templar for both Prot and Ret. I think it's very, very fun. I'll finally show off the capstone. You get an extra stack, or I'm sorry, you get a stack of Light's Deliverance whenever you call down a hammer. That's any of these hammers from using Hammer of Light, or just Shake the Heavens, or Hammerfall, you know, using Shield of the Righteous, using Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm. You're getting stacks of this buffed Light's Deliverance all the time. Basically every couple of seconds you're getting a stack. When you hit 60 stacks, you're able to cast another Hammer of Light for free. So instead of the 5 holy power cost, which I think kind of relates to Seraphim, that's something that Paladins have asked to bring back a lot. I think that instead of them bringing back Seraphim, having another cooldown, another buff that Pallies can layer over on top of all of their other skills, having an actual separate keybind that they have to manage, I think that doing it in this way, where it is tied into a skill, it's Eye of Tyr for Prot, it's Hammer of Wake of Ashes for Ret, but it's still, you know, you press the one big cooldown, and then you press the big cooldown again, and it burns through 5 holy power and gives you a massive amount of damage. Now for Prot, you don't have this as Ret. This Hammer of Light applies judgment to targets and gives you 15% haste for a little bit. So just a brief period of haste to kind of help with that burst damage as soon as you've cast Hammer of Light. For Prot, you also get 3 Holy Power when you cast Eye of Tear. That really helps with making it so that it's easy to instantly get that 5 Holy Power and burn it out. And let's just show that off here. Kind of show off some of the burst damage and big boom. Real big boom there. And, you know, as you can see, we're raining a lot of hammers here. Hammers are just falling constantly on all these guys. These training dummies don't know what hit them. Let's see if we can get maybe a nicer looking like pop here on a big single target as well. With the Wake of Ashes. Oh man, that's so satisfying to hit. And then let's pull a big Hammer of Light out. 743,000, again, wearing absolutely garbanzo gear, like, you know, literally wearing quest greens and dropping like very large hits on boss, like raid boss dummies. And doing that on a 30-second window, no less, it feels really, really good. And then, of course, you're not just able to do that on a 30-second window as Rat 45 as Prot. You're then also about, I think it's intended to be around every 90 seconds or so, you're getting an extra free cast of that. You know, there's no duration here, so you are in Mythic Plus, you're able to build these up between pulls. And if you just look at that buff, you can look at it here. You can see every time I'm casting... Oh, I have a couple of seconds here to get that hammer out. All right, there we go. You can see every time that they're triggering from Shake the Heavens, they're proccing. Every time I'm casting Templar's Verdict, it's proccing. So it's building up stacks really, really fast. Like, I think this is something that as the expansion progresses and haste values go up, this could actually be triggering like quite frequently. And maybe you're looking at more like 70 seconds or less in order to get one of these. So if you're getting, you know, multiple of these Hammers of Light per minute, you're going to have really high uptime on Shake the Heavens, which is then going to have like basically a multiplicative effect where you're getting even higher uptime or even shorter cooldown on this effect, basically. So I really like it. I think it's pretty cool. Obviously, a lot of Prot Paladins found a reason to complain. The 5 Holy Power cost is pretty high. I think that's undeniable. Should it maybe be 3? Yeah, maybe. You know, I think maybe if it were 3 Holy Power to cast Hammer of Light, I think that might soothe some people's concerns. But I think generally speaking, I've been pretty happy with this. I think that this is really great. I like Herald of the Sun. I also think it's pretty good for any sort of AoE, any sort of Mythic Plus situation. It seems okay for single target. But, you know, I think Templar, at least thematically, seems a little bit more single target oriented, and Herald of the Sun seems a little more AoE oriented. Both really good though. Both super duper dope. Again, Ret Paladin, maybe the best spec in the game for among melee DPS right now, and I feel like it has gotten stronger, even more bursty, more consistent as well, doing more consistent damage in all situations, really. You know, feels pretty good. All right, now I'm going to finish up by talking about the Lightsmith hero spec, which is available to Prot and Holy. This is basically like, it's got some really good ideas in here, but I have to say, honestly, this is maybe the thing that has me looking at Prot Paladin and thinking prison as I'm looking forward to the next expansion, because I do see this as being something that some groups may like insist on having the Holy or Prot Paladin play in order to be a buff bot, and that imposition can be kind of unfortunate, especially with Templar being so much fun. So the core skill is Holy Armaments. If it was Homie Armaments, that would be a lot cooler. Holy Armaments is a bit of a weird skill. It's supposed to alternate between these two skills here, Holy Bulwark and Sacred Weapon. Holy Bulwark is sort of a shield, starts out as like a shield with 15% of max health and then stacks up every 2 seconds with a cap of 30%, bit reminiscent of Sacred Shield if you remember, not really that long ago now, Wrath of the Lich King Classic Prot Paladin. having Sacred Shield, I guess any Paladin, but, you know, having Sacred Shield, being able to apply that, and then it's sort of a rapidly reapplying shield. That is basically the same concept here. It's not a huge shield, but it is something that sort of rapidly reapplies, and it is a cooldown. Like if I cast it on myself, it lasts for 20 seconds at a time. And the base cooldown is 60 seconds, but you can spec into Forewarning to get a 20-second cooldown reduction, so that'll bring it down to about 48. And then you have Valiance here, which will give you a bit more cooldown reduction. You have to consume Shining Light in order for it to trigger that 3-second cooldown reduction. You're not doing that all that often. So I think in the kind of high scenario, high best case, you're getting about a 36-second average cooldown on Holy Armaments. I think more realistically, it's probably more like 40 to 45. So a little under 50% uptime on these two bonuses. And just to cover the Sacred Weapon bonus, it's a damage bonus. You put it on allies or yourself, whatever, and it will do some extra damage as procs, but only damage as procs. It's not a percentage damage increase. It's not a stat increase. It's not like a fun feeling bonus like Bloodlust or Power Infusion or anything like that. It really is just like you get some extra damage procs. A little bit boring, and I think that is maybe why people are a little down on this. Now, you are able to apply this to an ally by putting it on yourself, or you could put it on an ally, and then you will also get the benefit. Like, that is a really nice component of this. They built that twin priestess, twin suns, twin moons, whatever the power infusion hitting yourself and an ally. They've built that into this from the very beginning, which is good. I do appreciate that aspect of it, at least. The feeling of having to like spec into a hero spec that buffs and then give it away and not get anything for yourself sounds awful. So, you know, they beat that negative feedback to the punch. Good job on that. Now, there are some really interesting bonuses in here, things like Divine Guidance, which I really do like, and Hammer and Anvil, which I really like. So Divine Guidance makes it so that every time you spend Holy Power, your next consecration will build up some damage, and then it will split as like a direct upfront hit across all the enemies it hits, and also healing to allies. I think that's pretty cool. And then Hammer and Anvil, whenever you get a Judgment crit, it will do an AoE Shockwave, which I have my combat log pulled up here, and it's not hidden, so let's see if I can get a crit with Judgment. Nope. Double nope. Okay, it's interesting. I have about 25% crit, so let's see if I can just buy one. Boom, look at that. That's a pretty big proc there. Judgment hitting, you know, critting, and then procking on 4 targets around. That's pretty cool. And then I'll go ahead and drop a Shield of the Righteous in on them, and then I will throw down a Consecration. And as you can see, there was a big upfront hit from, if I can redrop that so it's not filling up my combat log, there was a big upfront hit from Divine Guidance, actually hitting for several ticks worth of Consecration all at once. So I do actually think there's a lot of stuff in here that is really fun and interesting, and like good for Paladins in all situations, good in raid, good. I mean, like being able to buff people, you know, I feel like that's going to be pretty hard to not be forced to play Lightsmith in raid. But I mean, also getting like Snap Threat out of your consecrations, that's pretty good in Mythic Plus. Getting extra AoE damage every time you Judgment crit, that's really good in Mythic Plus. So I do think there is some good stuff here. I would say finally, the capstone talent, Blessing of the Forge, makes it so that Avenging Wrath summons a Sacred Weapon, and during Avenging Wrath, your Sacred Weapon will cast your spells and echo your Holy Power spenders, so that's pretty cool. We can even show that off here. You can see it's helping me cast spells, maybe. If we look at the effects of Shield of the Righteous, it's not echoing them correctly, and this is something that I was kind of building to here with this. Let's see if it'll copy my... It did copy my Word of Glory. Yeah, that's cool. So one of the issues that I've run into with this talent tree, with this hero spec, is that Holy Armaments will sometimes just lock on Holy Bulwark. Like I'll cast Holy Bulwark and, you know, okay, hey, I did get Sacred Weapon back. Great. And then, you know, now I've cast Sacred Weapon and I get Holy Bulwark back. That's how it's supposed to work. Sometimes you will cast Holy Bulwark, and then your next one will be Holy Bulwark, and then your next one, and your next one, and your next one. It is supposed to rotate back and forth, and sometimes it will just get locked and not do that. There were also some bugs like Divine Guidance wasn't working correctly initially, but that seems to have been fixed, so that's good. One of the initial designs of this was that you were to actually like ground target all of these effects, all of these weapons, and that seems to have been completely removed. Thankfully, it seems like this talent here as well, which would, in the way it was designed at the very beginning, it was supposed to like spawn one on the ground for people to go pick up. It does seem like Divine Inspiration now will just throw a holy armament into a nearby ally as a random proc, and that's pretty cool. I would say in general, I'm not really thrilled about Lightsmith. I think there's a lot of stuff here that is really good and is worth getting excited about, and like, honestly, I could see it overshadowing some of the stuff in the Templar tree, Hammer and Anvil, Divine Guidance. Like, you know, I think those could wind up being really great. Actually, Rite of Sanctification, this ability to buff your armor and primary stat by imbuing your weapon. Annoying to cast this buff on your weapon every hour, like a shaman doing Wind Fury weapon, but even more annoying because you don't press the button and then it works, right? You have to press the button and then click your weapon. Lame. But I think that's pretty fixable, you know, hopefully. I think the idea here is okay, but like, I'm not thrilled about playing it. I just don't really want to be a buff machine for other people, and I think especially with this being just sort of random damage procs, probably is better for you as the prop paladin. I wouldn't be surprised if this winds up being the better option for damage output at some point. You know, some level of tuning can make this better than Templar, but it doesn't really have this sort of like fun thematic feel, and it adds an extra keybind and another cooldown to have to track and pay attention to. And then also, finally, it's gonna make people upset that you put the sacred weapon on somebody else instead of them. And that's always a problem with that sort of thing. It's a problem with Augmentation Evoker, problem with Power Infusion, problem with all of those kind of bonuses is that interpersonal issue of people demanding it for themselves and being upset when they don't get it. All right, so just to finally wrap things up, I really like the two Ret Pally hero specs. I think they're both pretty awesome, and I think it could go either way as to which one winds up being better in whatever situation. You know, they're both pretty great. For Prot Paladin, I really like Templar. I think it's pretty fun. Lightsmith, I think it has a lot of power, and I think aspects of it could be good. I think I'll probably enjoy playing it more than more than kind of the worst case scenario, but, you know, yeah, it could be better. So that's it for Paladins so far in the War Within Alpha. I think they're looking pretty great. I think Ret Pally obviously has gone from the best to the bestest, and I think Prot Paladin has gone from great to even more great. So looking pretty good for Paladin so far. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.